I never believed that horror was real. Not really. Until I uncovered these secrets, dark, buried truths that don't belong in any movie because they're too real. They say fear comes from the unknown. But what happens when you finally know the truth and wish you never did? Tonight, I'm going to share dark secrets of horror that will make you question everything you thought was safe. And I warn you, once you hear them, you won't sleep the same again. They say the mirror never lies. But what if I told you it hides something? Something old, something watching, something waiting for the perfect moment. When you're most vulnerable, alone, and unaware. You lean in to brush your teeth, wash your face, and adjust your hair, never thinking that maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one looking in. That thought never really bothered me until last winter. I was researching urban legends for a personal project, compiling creepy stories, diving deep into the weird and terrifying things people whisper about late at night, but pretend to forget in the morning. Ghost tales, sleep paralysis demons, shadow men. But one kept showing up again and again, not just as folklore, as something much darker, something that felt too detailed to be made up. It was a case out of Chicago. I stumbled on it through a Reddit thread about real-life horror stories. Someone had linked to an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Woman discovers intruder living behind bathroom mirror." That alone was enough to give me chills. But it was what came next that unsettled me. According to the article, in 2002, a woman named Ruthie, she was a nursing student living alone in a small apartment, had been hearing odd sounds in her bathroom at night. Scraping, tapping, breathing. She thought it was just bad plumbing or rats. Maintenance came and checked everything. Nothing. Then, one night while brushing her teeth, she swore she saw something move behind the mirror. Just a flicker, like the glass wasn't reflecting, but showing. She called the police. They responded, assuming it was stress or paranoia, maybe even drugs. But one officer decided to check the mirror anyway. What he found still haunts me. The mirror wasn't bolted to the wall. It was hanging loosely, framed like decoration. Behind it, a square hole, dark, deep hollow, a void, and it wasn't empty. There was a crawl space, a narrow, dust-covered tunnel that ran between apartment walls. And in it, crouched low and unmoving, was a man. Thin, filthy, hollow-eyed. He had been living inside the walls, sneaking between units, stealing food, and watching tenants through their bathroom mirrors. For months, they said he was homeless, deranged, but that didn't explain the journal they found with him. Pages and pages filled with names, times, and sketches. Ruthie's name was there. Time she woke up, time she showered, what she wore, what she said on the phone. Her mirror time. I read that phrase and it stopped me cold. Mirror time. After police arrested him, he wouldn't speak. Not a word. Just smiled. Later, he tried to bite one of the officers at booking. The papers called him the Mirror Man. What chilled me more was that when I started looking into other police reports in surrounding cities, I found similar cases. Hidden, buried. In 2005, a man in Detroit claimed he found a tunnel behind his mirror. Empty, but signs of recent activity. Food wrappers, old clothes. In 2008, a woman in Cincinnati discovered strange footprints in the dust behind her medicine cabinet after her dog barked incessantly at the wall for 3 nights. In 2011, a college student in Boston went missing. Her roommate said she'd been hearing whispering from the pipes behind their shared wall for weeks. They later found a small hatch behind a mirror in the dorm bathroom. It led nowhere, and yet, the wood inside showed claw marks. I felt obsessed. I was no longer just researching urban legends. I was uncovering something real, something crawling in the spaces between drywall and sanity. One night, I sat alone in my apartment, reading over old case files and blogs, and I noticed something disturbing. Many of the reported victims, those who saw movement in mirrors, who heard breathing through the tiles, had a common trait. They all lived in older buildings, pre-1990s, most of them with questionable maintenance histories. Guess what kind of building I live in? That realization hit me like a punch. I stood up immediately and walked to my bathroom. I looked at the mirror, really looked. It had always been loose, slightly tilted at the edge. I always assumed it was just poor installation. I grabbed the frame and tugged gently. It wobbled. Something about the silence behind it felt wrong. Too hollow. I got a screwdriver and pried it off. Behind it was a gap. Not deep, but definitely more space than a simple mirror backing should allow. A few inches of darkness. Cold air hit my face. I reached my phone over and snapped a picture with flash. The image showed a tunnel, long, narrow, lined with dust and insulation. And in the far back, just at the edge of visibility, was something that looked like a boot. I couldn't move for a minute. My hands shook. I stared at the screen, zooming in again and again. But no matter how many times I looked, I saw the same thing. A boot, attached to a leg, bent, like someone had just ducked out of frame. I backed away from the mirror. I didn't call the police. I don't know why. Part of me thought I was imagining it. Part of me didn't want to disturb whatever I had just seen. I put the mirror back and didn't sleep that night. But that was just the beginning. The next day, I noticed small things. My cereal box was slightly turned the wrong way. My toothpaste cap wasn't where I left it. And my cat, usually fearless, refused to enter the bathroom. She'd hiss, her fur raised, and back away from the door. I started keeping notes. Times, sounds, smells. The air near the bathroom had a strange scent, like damp wood and sweat. On the fourth night, I heard something that made my blood run cold. I was half asleep when I heard a low creak, then the unmistakable sound of breathing. Not mine. It was coming from the wall. I grabbed my phone, opened a voice recorder, and held it up to the mirror. After a few minutes, I heard a faint tap, then another, then silence. The next morning, I played it back, and what I heard made me nauseous. At minute 2, a voice whispered, "You saw me." That was all. Quiet, raspy, confident. I left my apartment for a week, stayed with a friend, didn't tell them why, just said I needed a break. But I kept thinking, if someone was in my walls, who else might they be watching? If there are tunnels in my building, there must be more. And the worst part, I couldn't stop wondering, what if it wasn't just a man? I went back during the day with a flashlight and a GoPro taped to a stick, removed the mirror, and pushed the camera into the gap. The feed was shaky and full of dust, but after about 2 feet, it turned. A right angle. There was a tunnel, a real one, carved through plaster and beams, wide enough to crawl, and inside it, blankets, food wrappers, a notebook. I pulled it out with a hook. Inside were sketches, people, all from shoulders up, all staring at mirrors. One of them was me. Same shirt I wore 2 weeks ago. Same hair. Same expression I had when brushing my teeth. Same scar near my eyebrow. I dropped a notebook. I couldn't breathe. I started to cry, something between panic and disbelief. Because that sketch, it had only one difference for me. The reflection in the mirror wasn't mine. It was someone else, with hollow eyes, smiling. I moved out that day, broke my lease, told the landlord I had a family emergency. I didn't sleep well for weeks, but didn't end there. Sometimes, even in my new place, I'll catch myself staring into the mirror too long. And every now and then, I swear, just for a second, my reflection lags behind. I've taped all the mirrors in my home. I don't care how crazy it sounds, because I've learned the truth. The terrifying, skin-crawling truth. The man behind the mirror wasn't just some deranged drifter. He was part of something larger, a web of people or things that exist in the margins. The spaces behind walls, the shadows and reflections, the eyes behind the glass. They feed on attention, on fear, on the act of being watched and watching. I think about Ruthie a lot. I wonder if she still checks her mirror every night. I know I do. And after hearing this, you probably will too. So tonight, when you're brushing your teeth or washing your face, don't lean in too close. Don't turn off the light before you're done. Because if you ever see your reflection smile when you didn't, don't blink. And whatever you do, don't turn your back. Now, coming to our second story. I've worked as a sound editor for 10 years. People think horror films are all about jump scares and blood, but they're wrong. What really unsettles people is the sound. It's the low frequencies you barely notice, the silence that stretches just a little too long, and the scream that doesn't sound like it's coming from the actor, but from something else entirely. I never believed in the supernatural. My job was simple: clean up the raw audio, sync the dialogue, build the sound design, and move on to the next project. It wasn't art, it was work. But all that changed with one project. The film was called Echo Chamber, an indie horror flick about a woman haunted by voices she hears in recordings. Ironic, considering what happened to me. I was freelancing out of a small studio in Glendale. It was late October, and the post-production team was swamped with projects trying to hit the Halloween release window. I didn't even meet the director, just got the hard drive delivered with all the raw takes and a folder of notes. Simple enough. They wanted the screams cleaned up, some background removed, maybe a few added effects to thicken the atmosphere. Standard stuff. It was a Tuesday night when I heard it the first time. I was going through take 17 of scene 43, a shot where the actress runs through a hallway screaming. Nothing special, just your standard sprint and screech. I isolated her vocal track, running a spectral denies to clean up the mic fuzz. And then, in the waveform, I saw something weird. An irregular bump, barely perceptible, like a whisper tucked beneath her main scream. Curious, I soloed that frequency range and boosted it. The room around me got very, very still. At first it sounded like static, just wind or electrical hum. But then, deep in the low end, there was a voice. Soft, cracked, begging. Don't let them see me. It wasn't part of the take. I scrubbed back and forth, playing it again. It was definitely there, but it didn't sound like the actress. The voice was off, like it had been recorded on another mic older. Farther away, but clear. I checked the metadata, thinking maybe it was a sound effect embedded by accident. Nothing. No added layers. Just raw dialogue. I felt cold. Not scared exactly. More like off balance. You know that sensation when someone whispers your name in a crowd and you turn around, but no one's there? That's what it felt like. Still, I chalked it up to corrupted data. Glitches happen all the time in audio. I labeled the track for review and moved on. But then things got stranger. The next night, I was working on another scene when I heard a scream, but not from the film. It came from inside the studio. Now, you need to understand, my studio is soundproof, completely isolated. It has to be. No outside sound can get in, and none can get out. I sat still for a moment, heart pounding, listening. Nothing. I stood up, checked the hallway. Empty. Thought maybe someone outside dropped something or slammed a door, but the building was practically deserted. Most editors work from home now. I was one of the few left who preferred the silence of the studio. When I sat back down, I checked the playback log. It showed no audio playing when I heard the scream. Nothing had come from the system. No files open, no error tones, no rogue media. Dead silence. That's when I decided to revisit the strange whisper from scene 43. I opened it again and played the same section. This time, it was louder. Don't let them see me. Clearer. Not distorted. Not hidden. It was like the voice had moved closer. I shut everything down and went home early that night. But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how the voice sounded scared, not threatening. It was as if it wasn't trying to haunt me. It was trying to warn me. And there was something else. When I listened to it again in my head, the words didn't seem complete. They felt like the second part of a conversation, the end of a sentence. By Thursday, things had escalated. I started hearing sounds outside of the sessions. My headphones would pick up faint breathing, even when nothing was playing. I thought it was feedback, maybe interference from my phone, but I tested it over and over. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was editing a late scene, take 9, scene 68. The actress is supposed to scream while looking into a dark room. A basic jump scare build-up. But as I played it through, I noticed something deeply wrong. Her scream echoed twice. Once from her, and once from somewhere else. A half-second later, quieter and impossibly low. I soloed the echo track and nearly dropped my headphones. It wasn't an echo. It was another scream entirely. Male, guttural, pure terror. And it didn't match the acoustics of the room. It sounded like it came from a different place, somewhere much, much deeper, like a tunnel or a basement. I ran spectral analysis on it, hoping to isolate the background noise. What I found gave me chills. Under the scream was a faint, repeating sound. A knock, rhythmic, for times, then silence. Over and over. I tried to remove it, but the more I processed the track, the clearer it became. The knock turned into a beat, the beat into a phrase. A voice again, only this time, the message was different. They saw me, not a whisper, a growl, full of hate. That night, every light in the studio flickered at once. I backed away from the desk, staring at the monitors as they glitched. Lines ran through the screens. One of them went black, then another. Then the power died entirely. Total darkness. I stood there in the silence, too afraid to move. I could hear something behind me, breathing. Slow, deliberate, I turned around. There was no one there, but on the glass wall behind me was a handprint, small, like a child's, pressed against the inside. But I was the only one in the studio. I didn't go back the next day. I told the producers I was sick and needed time off. I didn't explain why. They didn't care. Editors are replaceable. But the truth was, I was scared. Not just of what I'd heard, but of what I'd invited. I couldn't stop listening to the scream. Even at home, it played over and over in my head. It was like an itch behind my eyes. I started recording ambient audio in my apartment, just to prove it wasn't following me. It was. On one of the recordings, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I captured it again. The scream, that same impossible echo, and layered beneath it, footsteps, slow, crossing the living room floor. My living room. I didn't hear them at the time, but the mic did. I left the apartment for a week, stayed in hotels, took sleeping pills, tried to forget. It didn't work. The dream started next. Always the same. I'm in a dark room, a recording studio, but older, dust-covered, wires hanging from the ceiling. I can't move, and across the glass, in the vocal booth, is a figure. I can never see its face, but it's always screaming. Only I can't hear it. The glass muffles everything. It screams and screams, banging on the glass, until finally, it turns its head just enough for me to see. It's me. I wake up in a cold sweat every time. I contacted another editor who had worked on Echo Chamber. He didn't answer my messages at first, but after I called him 3 times, he finally picked up. His voice was quiet, nervous. "You heard it, didn't you?" he asked. I didn't say anything. The whisper, the scream, it's always in the scream. He told me he quit sound editing 6 months ago. Said he started hearing voices outside of work. Couldn't sleep, couldn't stop listening. He became obsessed with tracing the sound, cleaning it, finding the original signal. But there was none. It didn't behave like any frequency he'd ever worked with. It shifted, changed, adapted. "It's not audio," he whispered. "It's a thing, a presence. It uses sound to get in." That was the last time I heard from him. His phone number no longer works. The worst part, I can't bring myself to delete the files. I tell myself I should, that I should wipe the drive, burn it, throw it in a lake. But I don't, because a part of me still wants to hear it again. Just once more, to understand, to listen all the way to the end. But I know what happens if I do. I found a forum once, deep on the dark web. Editors, composers, Foley artists, all anonymous. They talked about the sound, the signal. They said it doesn't exist on any one file. It exists between them. You only hear it when you're close, when you've listened long enough, when it knows you're ready. It starts as a whisper, then a scream, then it crawls through the silence. And once it finds your frequency, it never leaves. I don't work in sound anymore. I got a job in IT. I don't own speakers. I don't listen to music. I sleep with earplugs in. But sometimes, even though the plugs, I hear it. A faint voice, right before I fall asleep. Don't let them see me. I don't know who they are, but I think I've already seen them. And I think they've seen me too. Some people dream of fame. Others dream of love, wealth, or freedom. Me? I used to dream of peace. Just the kind of quiet sleep that made you forget the world. 8 hours of nothingness. Now I'd give anything to sleep, even one night, without seeing the eyes. It started with a book. An old, water-damaged thing I bought at a garage sale in a town I don't even remember the name of. I was passing through, bored, taking a detour on my way to a friend's cabin. I spotted this dusty table set up outside a falling-apart house. And among all the junk, there it was. The book had no title, no author, no barcode. The cover was just textured black leather with faint gold trim that had faded into green over time. When I picked it up, it felt wrong, too heavy for its size. The pages were yellowed, brittle. It smelled like smoke and mildew and copper. But something about it kept me from putting it down. Maybe it was the strange symbols inside. Most pages were filled with odd markings, spirals, strange dots and slashes, and what looked like handwritten lines in Latin or maybe an older dialect. There were pictures, too, charcoal sketches of wide, black eyes, hundreds of them, drawn over and over, sometimes taking up entire pages. I bought the book for $2. The woman selling it didn't say a word, just nodded when I handed her the cash, then immediately turned and walked back inside her house. I remember standing there for a second, feeling like I'd done something irreversible. The first night at the cabin, I flipped through the book under candlelight. There were no chapters, no titles, just page after page of drawings, patterns, and what looked like rituals. Most were unreadable, but one stood out. Page 43. It had a title, scribbled in jagged English across the top. To see what watches. Under were 6 lines, written in odd, rhythmic language. A chant. I read it aloud. Just once. As a joke. Nothing happened. I laughed at myself and closed the book. But that night, I woke up at exactly 3:11 a.m. Not because of a noise. Not a nightmare. I just woke up. The kind of sudden jolt where your heart's racing and you don't know why. The cabin was quiet, completely still, but something felt wrong. Then I noticed it. My window was wide open. I hadn't opened it. And outside was absolute darkness. No moon, no stars. Like the world had been covered in black paint. I stared for a while, trying to see, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was looking back. Not a person, not an animal. Something patient. Still, watching. I shut the window and locked it, but sleep wouldn't come again. The next morning, I blamed it on stress. I closed the book and stuffed it in my bag. But the next night, it happened again. 3:11 a.m. awake. Eyes open. Cold air. Open window. But this time, something had changed. There were handprints on the glass. Smudges. From the outside. Thin fingers, too long to be human. I ran outside with a flashlight, scanning the yard. Nothing. Just trees. Wind. But when I came back inside, the pages of the book had turned themselves to page 43. And in the margins, in shaky handwriting I hadn't seen before, were 4 words. Now they watch you. Let me pause for a second. If you're still watching this and you're as creeped out as I was, do me a favor. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs a good scare tonight. And if you haven't already, subscribe. I've got even darker stories coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now back to what happened next. The eyes began appearing in my dreams. First just one pair. Black, lidless, unblinking, staring at me from across a room I didn't recognize. Then there were more. Each night, they multiplied. Some floated in the air. Others were embedded in walls. Some just hovered in the void. And they never blinked, never looked away. They just stared. One night, I found myself unable to move in the dream. I was frozen in place while hundreds, thousands of eyes closed in on me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Just silence. Crushing, suffocating silence. I woke up screaming. That morning, I noticed something new in the mirror. My eyes looked different. Not physically, nothing you could measure. But there was a hollowness behind them, like part of me was shrinking inside. Withering. People started commenting that I looked tired or off. My boss sent me home early twice. I called my doctor. They ran tests, said I was perfectly healthy, but I knew something was happening. I tried throwing the book away, dropped it into a fire pit, and lit it. It didn't burn. I tried leaving it behind at a hotel. The next morning, it was in the backseat of my car. I even buried it in the woods, miles from anywhere. 3 days later, I found it on my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, no name, no return address. That night, I slept with the lights on. At 3:11 a.m., they shut off. Every bulb in the apartment blew at once. I heard a soft hum, then a voice, whispering from the corner of the room. You called us. I didn't move. Couldn't. I felt breath on my neck. Something crawling across the bed. But when I looked, there was nothing. Except the eyes. Dozens of them. Reflected in the mirror, across the room. Watching. Flickering like candle flames, but still as death. I moved out 2 days later. Got rid of everything. Started over. But it didn't stop. Wherever I go, new city, new place. I still wake at 3:11. Still feel the stare. And now, other people have started to see them. My girlfriend said she saw someone staring at her through her window last week. A man with black eyes. She doesn't know the book ever existed. I never told her, but she described the eyes exactly. I've tried everything. Therapy, rituals, even exorcisms. Nothing works. The worst part, sometimes I catch myself staring at people for too long, without blinking, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. I think they're using me now, as a doorway, a lens. I think I invited something in, and now it's looking out through me. If you ever find a book without a name, filled with eyes and whispers, don't read from it. Not even as a joke. Because once you see them, they see you too. And once they start watching, They never close their eyes. Thanks for watching. Sleep tight tonight, if you can.